to have our good friend George Strombo from
I'm the one with the
CBC,
privilege, man.
CFRB, good man, representing Tommy Douglas, most people remember him for. We just want to get your thoughts on the event, how you got involved with Hip Hop for Africa, the Mandela Children's Fund, and Cap AIDS.
Well, I don't think it's any secret if you see any of the stuff that I do that this is something that I pay close attention to and that's important to me. But when they asked me, it was just that simple. They said, "Do you want to do this?" I thought, well, of course I do, man. There's no doubt at all. I have to do something like this. And what I loved about it was you bring in two organizations together, right? Oftentimes you have a lot of great people with great intentions, and 100 people pushing, it's important. But if you can get 100 people pushing in the same direction, you can move a lot more. And tonight with the Children's Fund, Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and Cap AIDS, and what I love so much about Cap AIDS, think about the name of it, right? The Canada-Africa Partnership, which is what it is. A lot of times people think that things like this are just, we raise money and awareness, we give it away. It's not. Long-term, big problems, big challenges, big joys require partnership. And so I thought, man, this is like, I have to do this as a person. It's important to me to do this,
Your thoughts on Mandela in general? Maybe the first time you heard of him, maybe the Sky Dome event? Were you?
No, I was a real young kid, right? And I liked the music I liked listening to. It was very politically active, very highly charged with social activism. And I remember being very young and hearing about this man in jail, Mandela. It was more than jail, right? It almost seemed like a man in captivity. And so I was very young, and I started to hear all of these stories. And I remember the Ain't Gonna Play Sun City benefit record. And I was really young then, maybe not that young. And you see the movement, and I remember being young and asking questions, what is this about? Why is this man in? And then they said, well, he's unjustly in prison. And when you're a kid, it's like scales come off your eyes when you realize that life isn't what you always think it is. Things happen and change, and things are bad, and injustice happens. There are unjust situations, and this was one of them. And so, like that, to me, that was it. And because when he came out, he spent so much time focusing on the children because he recognized the value in that. I really appreciated that.
And speaking of children, another thing which we tried to bring into this event was our idea of hip-hop literacy, of bringing books to the kids, whether it's at a hip-hop club, whether it's at a library, classroom. As far as Mandela's books and maybe books about South Africa, do you have a lot of experience with that?
Well, Long Walk to Freedom, man, that was the book for me, right? I'm sure it's the book for you out there and for a lot of people. Especially when you get, he spent the early part, he talks about his childhood, and you kind of gain the understanding of where he came from, which is important because he became such a remarkable man who, centuries after he's gone, his name will mean the same thing. That's pretty dynamic. One name can last that long. So yeah, Long Walk to Freedom was the book for me.
There's been lots of movies about Mandela as well. Do you have a particular favorite, or maybe a certain footage of his that strikes you most?
No, I don't know. In terms of movies, there's always been those stories. For me, it's always been the music, right? That's what I found so interesting about him was the relationship he had with artists who never met him and who would never meet him, So, but there was a whole weird, in that late 80s, early 90s, even the movies that weren't about Mandela, like the movies about Stephen Biko and all of that, right? Because they all became part of the same thing, which was a global push for justice. And you know how it is, man, with the value of words. It's like there's all these words in the English language, and you wonder sometimes why that guy picked that 7 in a row. Why those 7? You could do so much more. And think about the word, injustice. Take one, 2 letters off, and it's what? It's justice. And I think that kind of, I think hip-hop bears a very big responsibility here. And oftentimes they succeed. And oftentimes they fail. And what's important is to lay the pressure on the people you value and say, listen, I need more from you. I need better from you. And literacy isn't just books. Literacy is a good record, man. Hip-hop literacy is actually just cultural literacy, and I respect that.
And then it's very good you brought up hip-hop. One thing which we've also tried to do with the event, our artist Iman Faith and his AIDS awareness rap song. This is something where we're hoping this will, through the medium of hip-hop, maybe inspire some kids, maybe even get some adults thinking as well. Maybe your thoughts on that whole project. I mean, we were also lucky to work with the Mandela Fund and actually be able to get, record a PSA for them, get actual speech clip of Mandela to use on the CD. I mean, all that together, we hope that when people saw it, it would make an impression, and so we'd love your thoughts on that.
Do you ever see kids walking around the street quoting Stephen Harper or Paul Martin? Never, right?
Yeah.
You see kids quoting their mother or father? Sometimes, but rarely. They quote Tupac, man. You know? They quote Big. They quote Stickman. And then they quote Dead Prez, right? They quote Public Enemy. I quote Public Enemy. And Slayer. But it's like that's the value. Right? There's that's and I suspect that's why so many people run from that, because they don't want that responsibility. But those are the poets of our time. They just happen to have beats behind them and scratches and girls singing the hook. Right? That's it. You know, so I think, you know, if you don't sing about it in your songs, what are you singing about? Girls again? Like, it's good to sing about girls in cars, but if that's all you're about, boring. What a waste of talent, man. If that's all your thing is the shit that you wear around your neck and shit that you put a key into. Like, if that's all you're about, I guess that's cool, but that isn't good. Like, that's cool to get people to bang their heads and move their heads and bop their heads, but that isn't going to get anybody to move and climb a mountain. And you need those tracks. And that, you know, Iman's song, that's one of them tracks, you know.
Thank you. And for some of the kids who, I mean, you've worked in so many different mediums. You know how powerful media is. Kids maybe who are trying to get into radio, TV, music in general. I mean, any thoughts on? I mean, you've spoken to so many artists, filmmakers, political leaders. Any thoughts on how they can guide themselves and what might be?
You know, I know it sounds ridiculous, but do what you want. Because in the beginning, do what they ask you to do and learn how to do this job. But once you demonstrate that you belong in this position, then don't waste your opportunity. And I would say that sincerely. All the artists I talk to who mean it, like, those are the ones who live their life and love their life. Those ones who don't know what they're about, it just seems like there's a little bit of emptiness there. And I think that I think if you're watching this and you know those artists I'm talking about, you know the ones that you want to be. Look at the people standing beside you to the left and to the right. Your responsibility in this world is to make their life better. And theirs is to make your life better. And the ones you've never met make their lives better. So if you're the kind of artist, you know, or media person who just do what you believe in. Like, oh, God, the world would be such a lovely place.
Well, on behalf of...
ridiculous in Tony Robbins' business, which is not what I'm going for, man.
It's a beautiful thing. So definitely again, on behalf of the Mandela Children's Fund Canada and Cap AIDS, thank you for your time. Thank you for your words. And
it's a pleasure, man. It's always nice to see you.
Thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, man. Go to the website. What's the website? It's Mandela-children.ca. Go to that.
And capaids.org.
Right?
Yeah,
beautiful thing. Right on, man.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks again, Dave. Yeah, definitely.
Right on.